Welcome to the Thriving Outside the Box podcast. Join me, Dr. Kimberly Grocher, a licensed psychotherapist, executive coach, and yoga and mindfulness meditation teacher, as I shed light on the stories of leaders and entrepreneurs across industries who not only dared to create their own path in their careers, businesses, and lives, but have found a way to do it while thriving mentally, physically, and spiritually. I hope you walk away with the inspiration to do the same. Welcome to another episode of Thriving Outside the Box. I am your host, Dr. Kimberly Grocher, and I know I say this every time, but I really am very excited to welcome my guest today, Christian Brown. Christian, I will maybe talk about how we connected in a bit, but I first want you to go ahead and introduce yourself to the people and what you do and where you're located and all that good stuff.
Yeah, amazing. Well, first, thank you for the opportunity to be on your podcast. Looking forward to having this conversation with you. And I'll just start with introducing myself by stating my life purpose, which is to help people find happiness in their struggle and peace in their process of healing. And so that purpose statement has taken me across the world to where I'm based full time now, which is a small city in the southeast of France called Annecy. And so I'm living there full time. And I've been there for the past 3.5 years, working on building a business and also just healing and growing personally. So it's been a great journey, which I'm sure we'll dive deeper into.
Absolutely. So Christian and I met 2 years ago, right? Through a mutual mentor and advisor. I was going to France for the writers and artists residency. And she mentioned to me, she said, oh, well, you should connect with Christian Brown. He's over there. He's building a wellness-based business in France. You all would be a great connection. And so when my friend and I were in Paris, before I went back to the States, we met up at your office in Paris.
Yeah.
And it was great. And we started talking a little bit about your business and your work, and we've stayed connected since then. So I'll stop there. And why don't you go ahead and tell people, how did you get to France? How did you get into the business that you're doing, the work that you're doing, all that good stuff?
Yeah, for sure. The whole journey started as a search for purpose. Growing up, my mom owned a hair salon and my dad was in pharmaceutical sales. So I always saw my parents helping people, my mom for physical touch and my dad through medicine. So I had this desire to want to help people as well, but I didn't know how that would manifest in my life. And once I got to college, I went to Kennesaw State outside of Atlanta. And the first 2 years, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had a passion for writing, for creativity, but it wasn't a cool thing to do, especially just as a Black man outside of Atlanta. My influences were more geared towards music, entertainment, or just street culture too. Mm-hmm. And so my first couple of years of college, I kind of got swept up into that world of just being lost, really. And so one of the most pivotal moments in my journey was my 19th birthday, my freshman year of college, where I got arrested for throwing a party on my birthday. And I remember it was a huge thing on the college campus, a huge party that I was throwing, and I was arrested for illegal possession of alcohol. And so I just had to spend a night in jail. But even just that one night was enough to make me realize, okay, if I don't intentionally design my life, society will design it for me. And so from that moment, I started to think about how to be more intentional. Mm-hmm. And so that following year, I was able to move from my college town to the actual city of Atlanta in Buckhead. And that was my first time coming across entrepreneurship. I would see people that looked like me, but looked very well off, nice cars, nice houses. And so I still am very talkative. I can talk to anybody. And so I would ask people hey, what do you do? What do you do? And I kept hearing this word, entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. And so I told myself, okay, I want to do that. I want to be an entrepreneur. And so I started to study what that meant. I started studying entrepreneurship, leadership. And the first kind of business book that I read was How to Win Friends and Influence People. That just taught me the value of relationships and networking. And so after that, I just continued to invest in myself. I invested in a couple courses on social media marketing and started just pursuing this life of entrepreneurship, creating value to sell. And so I was doing things like social media marketing. I started an e-commerce store early on where I was selling baby products just because I saw this stat that said there were, I don't know, it was a crazy amount of number of babies born every minute. So I thought to myself, okay, this is a market that surely I can just have like a fraction, right? A fraction of success in.
Absolutely.
Right. And so I started doing that. It was cool. I started making a little bit of money. And I ended up taking a break from school around this time as well of college. I took a year off. And one of my friends at the time had a job with Delta Airlines. With his job, he had a really cool benefits. He could fly anywhere in the US for free and internationally. And you could fly anywhere and you just pay for the taxes and fees. And so I said, okay, I want to do that too. And at this time, I'm seeing other entrepreneurs also traveling abroad. And it seems like it's a part of the entrepreneurial grind. And so long story short, I'm doing this e-commerce business, making money online. And I was able to get a job at Delta with one of my friends. And so I took the Delta pass and I was able to just travel a lot. And so when I was 21, I ended up going to 15 countries in 1 year.
Wow. So what were you doing for Delta?
So I was what's called a ramp agent, and it was just a seasonal job. Mm-hmm. I was a ramp agent, and it sounds fancy, but I really was the one putting the bags on the plane. So
okay, but you were also putting yourself on the plane too.
I was putting myself on the plane too, and it was such a blessing because it was a summer job, and I was a part of the last cohort. So I worked maybe 3 months, two or 3 months, but I had the benefits for the whole year.
That is awesome.
It was the best, yeah.
I've never heard of that. I've heard of different airline jobs, right? But like I've seen it, but I haven't really met anybody that has done it. And then to know those benefits. So yes.
Delta was the best. So to give you some perspective, I was able to fly to Paris for $72. And sometimes this was first class too, right? So imagine first class seat for $72. And so that year I went to Paris 3 different times. And I went with my dad one time. And it was so funny because most of the time, maybe 2 of the times we were on first class. And so one of the times we went, one of the stewardess asked another stewardess, like, hey, is this guy a rapper? You know, why do you know him? And why is he doing first class? And she's like, no, he's not a rapper, right? But just, just that perspective, is funny. But just going to Paris, it captivated me. I told you I had a passion for writing and just being in Paris. I don't know, it made me inspired. It was like being in a different world. And I was like, okay, I like this place. I want to keep coming back. What would it be like to live here? And so after going to Paris that year, planted that seed of, okay, one day I may actually be able to live here. Mm-hmm. And so that year, it was really impactful. So my entire life changed. But it was also the year that I first discovered my purpose. And it was after a trip to Senegal, to Dakar. I went with one of my best friends who also had a job at Delta, and he's Senegalese. So we were able to stay with his family. And it was my first time in Africa, and just seeing people there living in these really harsh conditions, but still having positive spirits, still smiling, still laughing and joking. I was like, wow, if they can live like this and be happy, then why is anybody in America ever, envious or down or? Mm-hmm. And it changed my perspective. And so after that moment, I said, okay, I'm realizing that everybody has struggles, but it's also possible to find happiness in your struggle. And when you find happiness in your struggle, like that's the golden light, right? So I said, okay, I want to do that. I want to help people find happiness in their struggle.
So can we just pause for a second?
Yeah.
I just want to take a moment to reflect. This is so cool. So I think one of the things that I find so cool about your story is that a lot of your learning and education is coming from life, right? Mm-hmm. Like going to jail for the night, because of the party, right? And realizing, oh, I got to be intentional moving forward, right? Going to Buckhead and seeing entrepreneur, like, like this is a thing. Like I could do this. Okay, I'm gonna do this. And then going to Senegal and seeing how other people are living, maybe not by the standards we would consider here in the US as desirable, right? But they're happy. They have joy, right? They're living a good life. And it shows, right? And it's just such a contrast to what we have here. Not to mention you flying all these other countries. So a lot of what you're picking up has been intentional based on your own journey outside of the classroom. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. And every trip and even just living abroad, it's all felt like an adventure. And I saw this quote that says, life is an adventure to live, not a problem to solve.
I love that. Life is an adventure to live, not a problem to solve.
Right. Right. And so that's one of my mantras, because it feels like from every adventure, I'm learning something. Not everyone is positive. I've had some, traumatic moments abroad, but I'm always learning. And so through Blimish, and we could do Blimish later, but we have these affirmation bracelets, and I'm wearing two right now. But I have one quote that says, "I never lose. I either win or learn." And that's a quote from Nelson Mandela. But that's just one of the mantras that I try to live by through every situation. It's never a loss. It's either I'm winning here or I'm learning something, but it's always positive.
I love that. So, how did you get to live in Paris? When did you say, okay, I'm actually gonna, or France, period, right? When did you say, I'm moving to France? And what did that look like?
Yeah, for sure. So after that Senegal trip, I came back to the US and everything changed. I ended up enrolling back into my university. I changed my major to entrepreneurship, and I was intentional about finding a mentor. And I learned about mentorship just through studying entrepreneurship. And all of the lessons were either through just my lived experience or things that I was seeing online. But I knew that I needed an actual individual who was further ahead than I was. And so when I got back to school, changed my major to entrepreneurship, it was maybe the first or second day of class, we had a guest speaker come into our entrepreneurship class. And there's a guy named Mike Russell, and he was a tech entrepreneur, millionaire. And he came to our class. He was like, I have my own tech company. Just talking about his life. And so I said, okay, this is a cool guy. I want to do, what he's doing. I want to learn from him. And so after he finished talking to our class, I went up to him and I was like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur too. I want to learn from you. Can you be my mentor? And so he agreed, and he gave me his card, told me to give him a call. And every week for about a year, I drove to his office and spent like 30 minutes to an hour with him. And I had a list of questions that I would ask him going into our meetings. And so through meeting him, he kind of shifted my perspective around entrepreneurship, where it's not just about what you're selling to make money, but really how you're living out your passion, living out your passion and your purpose. And so at the time when I met him, I still had the baby products company. And he said, okay, what are you passionate about? I said, writing. And he was like, hey, well, I think you should try to figure out how to build a business around writing. And so I kind of shifted my focus from just doing e-commerce to actually figuring out how to create a writing company. And so that year I created a company called Visionary Writing. We would write and publish books for entrepreneurs. And during that time, that's when just this vision of writing books in Paris kind of really started to gain some fire in my heart. And so as a college student, I started going on LinkedIn and finding people, connecting with people that lived in Paris. And I sent about 100 messages. Just, hey, I'm a college student. My dream is to live in Paris. Can you help me? Right. I spent a bunch of time doing that. Got the ball rolling. But from those 100 messages, nobody gave me any insight. And so it was a bit discouraging, right? Because I felt so sure that this is what I was supposed to do. And so when I graduated, my mentor ended up offering me a job at his tech company to take over his marketing team. And so I did that. I worked in corporate for a couple of years, and it was great. I enjoyed it a lot. I learned a bunch. But then around COVID time, when the world kind of shut down, I went through my own struggles with that. And I started going to therapy, started just unveiling some things that I was, dealing with, some childhood traumas. And it built up this passion for wanting to create more access to mental health and wellness resources. And so I came across this. Well, before I came across the program, I felt that urge to, make the attempt to live in Paris again. And so I repeated the task of reaching out to all those people on LinkedIn. But the second time, there was one lady who, she was a startups manager at WeWork in Paris. And I sent her the message while I was in college. She didn't respond. 2 years later, I followed up like, hey, it's me again. I still want to move to Paris. Can you help me? And the same day, she responded. And she said, hey, Christian, I'm so sorry I missed your message from 2 years ago, but I would love to help you. Let me know how I can help. And so we started to build a relationship, and she told me about what's called the French Tech Visa, which is a 4-year renewable visa program that the president of France put together to attract international founders to build their startups abroad. And so I went through that process of pitching this idea for this mental wellness business. And I got accepted into the program, and I was able to move because of that.
That is so cool. So first of all, the persistence, I love.
Mhm.
The persistence, they're like, oh no, I have questions. You're going to answer them for me. Oh no. You know?
Right? It doesn't matter. 2 years or 3 years, 5 years, we're going to make this happen.
Yes, the tenacity. I love it. And then finding out that there was a visa program. And so was it a program or was it the visa itself and you applied for the visa? Or was it like a program that you went in and they helped you get established?
Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of both.
Okay.
So it was its own visa, but in order to get the visa, you had to be with the program.
Okay, gotcha. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then you're in Paris.
So then I'm in Paris. January of 2022 is when I made the leap and packed up all my things. I remember leaving at my parents' house, and before leaving like my childhood bedroom, I just cried. I cried because it felt like I don't know. I can't really explain the emotions, but I just knew it was a transition. I knew I was about to just leap, take a leap. And I felt for that kid, that was just writing in secret, right? Because it wasn't a cool thing to do. This young adult who was, able to find a way to move overseas completely. So January 22, I moved and I joined the program. It was an incubator program that I joined. And so as soon as I touched down, I had my own office at the WeWork, and I was also paired with about 30 other entrepreneurs who are building all kind of things. And I just hit the ground running.
I love that part. And so I met you, I guess you had been there almost 2 years by that time, in your office, living, working, doing your thing. So during this time, you built Blimish. Is that correct?
Right. Yep. Okay. So I had the idea for Blimish before going to France, but I used the idea for Blimish to pitch it to the program and get accepted. And this was after I kind of experienced this season of emotional burnout while working at this tech company. Like I said, COVID, but it was also around the whole George Floyd murder and that situation. And I was the only Black man at this company. And I felt all these emotions around just the weight of the entire nation, because of this event that happened. And nobody else was talking about it. Nobody else even felt like they cared about what Black people in general might be going through after experiencing this. And so I just had this built up aggression, built up sadness, and I didn't know what to do with it. And so that's when I started going to therapy, and I was able to find a way to articulate how I was feeling in a way that was constructive in the workplace. And it helped, but it took months of therapy because there were no spaces to talk.
That's a lot. I just want people to imagine for a second, especially if you're a Black person who was living during that time. Because I remember I was doing a lot of groups for these corporations where people would come together, Black people, people of color would come together, have these spaces to really talk about, what was happening that their companies were sponsoring. So I just know the things I heard in those meetings. And I'm just trying to imagine you being the only one and that not even being an option.
Right.
Okay, so you got that weight. You've been doing this work. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you for highlighting that, right? Because the only one, and I'm the youngest one too. Right, which also just adds extra pressure because it's my first corporate America job. I'm thinking to myself, is this even necessary? Right? Am I allowed to have these feelings? Am I allowed to say something? Or am I supposed to keep everything under the rug and just move like nothing happened? Yeah, so I'm not even understanding it or knowing what I should do. So it was tough, but luckily, just through talking with a professional, finding a counselor and kind of just being able to vent and get some direction, it really helped, as well as it made me aware of other things that were affecting me that I didn't really understand. Just coming from a background of just generational trauma, domestic violence, all type of things that I didn't realize affected me, but being able to just kind of take a look back and really sit with my feelings, learn some resources for my well-being. It helped me a lot And around this time, I kind of had this epiphany where I was like, okay, I really value this act of therapy, but it kind of sucks that I have to pay, $300 a month, for this. And I'm working in this field of technology where our goal is to use these tools to create access and to make people's lives easier. How can we use these technologies, especially emerging technologies, to create access for people to invest in their mental health and well-being? And so that was like the problem that created Blimish.
Awesome. So tell us all that Blimish is, because you have a there's a few moving pieces.
A few moving pieces with Blimish, and I'll kind of like share the story shortly. So shared the problem statement, but then it's like, okay, how do we do this? And so we wanted to primarily focus on emerging tech. And at this time, we were focusing on virtual reality. We saw VR as a tool to create alternate realities within a healthy way. So our original idea was to use virtual reality as a place for individuals to meet with therapists in a world that they can create, right? If they feel more comfortable at a beach or more comfortable, in the mountains or whatever, they can design this environment and still meet with a professional where there's a shared experience. Even though it's virtual, when you're in VR, you're fully immersed.
Right.
Right. So that was the original vision, which is also how I met Dr. Robin, our mutual connection, because at the same time, she was also building a VR company at that time. And so she became a mentor and advisor for me as well, and kind of helped me navigate that. But as we were building this solution, it was a really cool experience. We started hosting events in Paris just as a way to bring people together and introduce them to who we are and what we're trying to do. And so we started hosting these events and we had VR meditation experiences at these events. And it was cool. It was great learning experience, great way to build community. Then over time, as we were talking to more establishments about what we were building and also, trying to raise funds too, we started getting some pushback around the idea of accessibility when it comes to our solution, because our goal was to unlock access to these resources. But having a VR solution, it already creates some type of accessibility issues because only a certain amount of the world has VR headset, right?
Right.
And so we said, okay, how can we pivot? And so during this time, we leaned on this community that we built, and we started introducing new ideas to them. So we did things like having, tea ceremonies, having journaling sessions, using technology, having meditation experiences. And we started doing this thing called AI art therapy, which is where we would use AI art as a medium for group conversations. And so during this time, we were just trying to figure it out. We were pivoting. And with the AI art therapy, that was one thing that really had a positive impact on people. And it was also this concept of positive vulnerability. And Dr. Robin gave me that term, positive vulnerability, but putting people in a shared space and creating an environment to where they can be vulnerable and then be positive, basically. And so with that data that we collected just by doing these events, we saw an opportunity to kind of package this experience up and then sell it to companies. And so we did that. And in 2024, we secured our first paid client in France, by selling this AI art therapy type of workshop, which was really cool. That was like our first paying client after 2 years, right? Imagine that. I came to Paris to build this company, and for 2 years, I'm having to like hustle on the side and do marketing gigs and still writing books, but just trying to figure it all out. So it's stressful. But yeah, 2024, we got our first paying client, and from there, we've just been continuing to build and leverage the opportunity that we have, being in an American company, also with a branch in Paris.
That's awesome. So who is we? Who is we? You mentioned we built this.
Yeah, we built this. So it's a couple of us. So when I first had the idea, I reached out to one of my coaches, he was my life coach at the time. And his name is Tony Gaskins. And so this was a guy that I hired to be my business coach while I was working at this corporate job. And we just built a relationship and, I won't say became friends, but kind of built a relationship to where we saw that there was value in working together.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was the first one to really invest in the idea of wanting to build something together.
Mm-hmm.
But he was my first partner in Blimish, Tony Gaskins. And then I also reached out to a guy named Christopher Lafayette, who's an emerging technologist in California, Silicon Valley, and a mentor of mine. And I reached out to him and asked if he would partner with me on this as well. And he agreed. And then one of my childhood friends, who's a human capital development specialist in Mississippi, and he was just a part of the journey for so long. And so now he's a partner in Blimish as well. And so that's our core team. And they're able to build a network of advisors that have been helping as well. And then some people here and there in Paris help out as well. But that's the core of the Blimish team.
That is so cool. The professor in me wants to be like, see folks, like mentorship, coaching, hustling on the side, right? Like, so you did what you needed to do to pay your bills, feed yourself, keep a roof over your head while you continue to dedicate your time to this. So there's that tenacity again. And partnership. That's so important, that collaboration, that partnership. So I love talking to you. I love hearing about your journey because this is not a small thing. Like, this is really rich. There are so many pieces that have really come together for you because of your intention and your initiation.
No, I agree. The intention part is so real, and I'm super grateful for just all the experiences that led to, I guess, where I am now. And it's still just this habit of having to be intentional. You know, it's a consistent act because the same truth that I learned, you know, after getting arrested at 19, like if I'm not intentional about my life, society will paint a picture of my life for me. And so I'm still even battling with that and having to choose intention every single day. And now I'm to a point where I realize that it's so much bigger than just being intentional for myself. But now I'm thinking about, okay, the decisions I make today can impact, you know, my future family tomorrow. So let me make sure that I'm, again, being intentional and making the right decisions so that I can stay in this place of just integrity, you know, righteousness, intention, you know.
What made you decide to move from Paris to Annecy? Last time we talked, we didn't really get a chance to talk about that move, but.
Yeah, for sure. So I was living in Paris for the first 2.5 years. And I got to the point where I was a bit overwhelmed by Paris. Paris is such a vibrant, live city. And there's always something to do, always people to hang out with. And I caught myself in these basically negative patterns of not being able to say no, always going out, not being as focused as I felt like I needed to be. And then it required a change. You know, I felt that I was being called to somewhere new. And I like to refer to myself as a fly man of God. You know, like I'm guided by my faith, and I clearly just heard God telling me that I needed to go to a place where I can hear clearly what my next steps are. And so Annecy is a place in the southeast of France where it's a small countryside city, not nearly as many people as Paris, but it has the most beautiful landscape. I want to say I know in France for sure, but I want to say in all of Europe, right? It's this place that has a huge lake, Lake Annecy, and Google calls Lake Annecy the cleanest lake in all of Europe.
Wow.
I'm going to listen to Google on that. But it's just this beautiful city. It looks like a postcard. And being there felt like being with God, you know, and it makes me think about, I don't know the exact scripture, but it's one of the most popular scriptures. Yea, though I walk through the shadow of the valley of death, I shall feel no evil, for the Lord is with me. His rod and his staff, they comfort me. He leads me beside still waters. He makes me lay in green pastures. And so like even that, right? He leads me beside still waters. He lies me down in green pastures. That felt like Annecy. And so it was just another one connection away moment to how I was able to move there. You know, I took a trip there for a weekend, and I was going to an event in Geneva, Switzerland, because Geneva, Switzerland is about 30, 45 minutes from Annecy. And so I went to a networking event in Geneva. I spent the weekend in Annecy. And my Airbnb host was this really cool older French guy. And we met up, we talked for a little bit, and I found out that his sister-in-law lives right outside of Atlanta. And so we connected, and I told him that I'm considering possibly, moving to Annecy. And he said that he has several properties that he rents out. And he's like, if you want to move, let me know and I'll send you these properties. And I would love to rent it out to you. And so that connection kind of manifested into the actual move. So another person, right? Let's talk about that.
These relationships, these relationships, like, and the way that, first of all, you are listening internally, spiritually, you are being guided, right? And you're listening to that. And then also you're very open to having these conversations and building these relationships, and people feel connected to you. I know that was one of the things me and my friend Andrea, who went with me to Paris, we said, like, you were just so easy to connect with. You're somebody that you're like, oh yeah, I want to be connected to him. I want to talk to him. What can I do for him? Like, just good people, the way my family would say it. And you're using that to help you figure out the next steps on this very unique journey.
100%. Yeah. Right. I mean, in all glory to God, I try to listen. And I mean, I think it's a testament to my parents too, just for how they've raised me. My mom just constantly pouring into me and telling me words that I live with, like your gifts will make room for you and put you in front of great people. Right. That scripture. And just always kind of having those gemstones of words and statements that I'm able to hold on to when I'm feeling uncertain,
Yeah, absolutely. I have 2 more questions before we end. Okay. So one is, I think one of the unique things about your journey is that you are moving through the world as a Black man, and you're doing it boldly and with confidence, right? And so you're going to these places that I don't know if a lot of Black men consider would be for them.
Yeah.
And so how has that experience been for you?
Yeah, I love that. How has it been for me? It's been empowering for sure. And I think I'm in a unique position because I'm like African American. So being American first is a value that I've noticed the weight of over time, just after being overseas.
Mm-hmm.
It's different when someone thinks that I'm African versus when they know that I'm American. And I leverage that, right? I think I've learned just the value of leverage over time, being in business and traveling a lot. I try to see where I have leverage and use that leverage as much as possible. And I think, like, being a Black man, it's not always clear where our leverage lies in certain spaces. And I had to realize that in different rooms, my leverage is different. So I need to be aware of that before going into these spaces. And also knowing that I have value and influence just because of, like, who I am and what I look like.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a disadvantage. It's an advantage. Right?
Yes.
And so just realizing that first, because what I've noticed is with my friends, it's easy to have identity crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Like being a Black man, because especially being a Black man in business, I think like I said, I grew up just having these influences of Black men being in entertainment, being athletes, doing all these different things. And in business, I haven't seen or met, many Black men that were successful in the business space. And so it's also empowering knowing that if we can be successful in this arena, we can be successful in any arena, but it's going to take some pioneers. And just being able to say, okay, I'm going to hold up my flag and be a pioneer in this and do it boldly. Like, I'm happy to do that.
Yes, yes. Well, we are happy that you are happy to do this because we need the pioneers, absolutely. And how has it been being abroad, specifically in France? Like, I love France. And one of the reasons why I think I've enjoyed France when I've gone is that not everywhere, but certain places, you're right. Like, there does seem to be this historical appreciation for African Americans, right? Specifically, an appreciation that is not often felt at home. Mm-hmm. And has that been your experience?
Yeah, you're right. Historically, that's been almost sort of a safe haven for African Americans. Just thinking about, like, James Baldwin specifically. is someone whose story that I've tracked over the years, but also like Maya Angelou, who also spent some time in Europe and in Africa too. So my experience has been like, for one, I definitely feel safer abroad, just I think mainly because guns are illegal, right? Versus in Atlanta, I had anxiety when I didn't have a gun, right? So even that piece of just how I'm moving and able to move more freely is instantly a benefit to my overall well-being. And so that feels really good. But then also realizing how deep our culture is. And I would say for me, what's helped me find joy in my journey as a Black man abroad has been meeting other people of color, mainly Africans from places that I've never heard of. It makes me realize how rich our history and our heritage is. I'm meeting individuals from like Gabon, who I've never heard of Gabon. I never heard of, Malawi. Like I'm meeting people from these places. I'm like, okay, where is that? That's in Africa? Where? What? It's making me realize, okay, there's so much history that we have as people of color, and there's so much more to learn. Information and learning is so valuable because it kind of helps people figure out who they are, right? It's, at least for me, knowing how rich my history is helps me to be more confident in these spaces. It helps me to know, okay, I can connect with these people coming from these places, but I can also connect with just directly to Europeans, right? And I can be in both rooms and show up confidently and add value. And by doing this, I'm also inspiring people back home that have never been abroad, right? Because 49% of the American population does not have an active passport. And I wonder how many African Americans make up that 49%, right?
Yes.
I would guess it's probably a lot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so much to learn when we broaden our horizons and when we give ourselves permission to go beyond our borders, literally and figuratively.
100%.
And I will acknowledge, especially in this time, there's a privilege with that. There is a privilege with that.
100%. Yeah.
Okay, my last question is, what do you want to leave people with? What would you tell people about if they are creating their own path, they're inspired by your story, right? So they're ready to embark on their own journey. What would you tell them about being well while doing this?
Yeah, I would tell them to create space physically, emotionally, spiritually. Create space for new connections and new relationships. I shared that the first business book or leadership book I read was How to Win Friends and Influence People. I would recommend that book, but it just talks about the psychology of people and creating genuine relationships. And so I've noticed that, and I live by this quote, you're always one connection away from your dream. And so no matter what kind of path you want to create in life, there's somebody that you can meet that can be of value to you to make whatever dream life you want come true. And so don't shy away from that. Embrace that. Because as humans, no matter where you are in the world, there are things that we share and have in common just because we share the same humanity. And so find a way to lean into that and embrace that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Christian. Thank you. So where can people connect with you?
Yeah, for sure. On LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn a lot, Christian Brown. And you can also go to iamchristianbrown.com, and there you can see my different ventures, the writing. You can see find Blimish there as well. And yeah, I'll say those two places.
Okay, great. I'm also going to add them in the show notes. So thank you so much again, Christian. Thank you all for joining me once again. And I look forward to being with you all next time.
Awesome. Thank you.